Have you been studying English for months, maybe even years, and still feel stuck? Vocabulary won't stick. You understand words, but not real conversations. And when native speakers talk, it's like they're speaking at lightning speed. You freeze, embarrassed to reply. And deep down, you wonder, why is English so hard for me? What if I told you? You're not bad at English. You've just been learning it the wrong way. Because textbooks don't teach your brain. They just fill your memory. Flashcards? They vanish from your mind in days. Grammar drills? You memorize them, but forget them when you speak. You're not lazy. You're just trapped in a broken system. And the worst part? Every mistake. Every awkward silence. Every time someone laughed at your accent. It built a wall of fear inside you. You stopped believing that fluency was possible. But what if the secret wasn't more studying? Was it storytelling? Let me tell you a story. A young man named Eric Schmidt once thought he wasn't smart enough. He struggled in school. He wasn't the top of his class. But he had something powerful, curiosity. He didn't just read the rules, he questioned them. And one day, that same curiosity helped him become the CEO of Google. Yes, Google, the company that changed how the entire world learns, searches, and connects. Now imagine this. If Eric could transform his failures into success by changing how he learned, what could you do if you changed the way you learn English? Because here on the Control English, we don't teach with boring textbooks. We teach with real stories. Stories that make your heart move, your brain remember, and your tongue speaks naturally. Imagine this moment. You're at a cafe in New York or a diner in Kansas. You order coffee without fear. You understand every word the waiter says. You laugh, you respond, you connect. No hesitation, no translation. Just you, thinking and speaking in English. And suddenly, you realize you didn't just learn English, you became English. So, if you're tired of struggling, if you've waited too long for your English breakthrough, then this is your moment. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the Control English, because this documentary on Eric Schmidt is not just a story. It's your turning point. You're not here by accident. You're here because you're ready. Ready to speak. Ready to understand. Ready to control your English once and for all. Let's begin. Lesson 1. It begins quietly. In a small dorm room at Harvard University, long before anyone imagined a billionaire hedge fund titan could be born out of curiosity, discipline, and the hunger to take risks. The year was 1986. A young student named Ken Griffin, not yet 20 years old, sat beside his computer, staring at a flickering screen of financial data. Rain tapped against the window, but he didn't notice. He was watching the markets. Real-time trades, tiny numbers changing every second. To most students, these were random figures. But to Ken, they were whispers of opportunity. He had no Wall Street office, no wealthy background, no army of analysts. What he did have was a simple belief that information could be turned into success if studied long enough and understood deeply enough. So he built something that few students could imagine. He convinced the university to allow him to install a satellite dish on the roof of his dorm. It was small, homemade, and not exactly elegant. But it connected him to livestock quotes, something only professionals had access to at that time. That's where his story begins, not in luxury, but in curiosity. Ken Griffin was not chasing money. He was chasing understanding. That difference would become the defining trait of his life. Lesson 2. Ken's early fascination wasn't with the wealth itself, but with patterns, how numbers move, how people react, and how psychology drives markets. For an English learner listening to this story, this is where we pause and reflect. Every great success begins with curiosity, not talent, not luck, but the willingness to ask why. At Harvard, Ken didn't party much or sleep late. His nights were filled with charts, data, and coffee cups. Friends joked that he lived inside the market. But when the 1987 crash came, known as Black Monday, something incredible happened. While millions panicked, Ken made money. He had positioned himself correctly because he believed in preparation, not luck. That day, while the world saw chaos, Ken saw validation. His ideas worked. His confidence grew. He realized that risk wasn't something to fear. It was something to understand and manage. Lesson 3. After graduation, Ken didn't walk into a job. He built one. He founded Citadel, a name that would later echo across global finance. The word citadel means fortress, strong, unbreakable, secure. It was more than a name. It was a mission. He started small with a handful of people who shared his obsession with precision. Citadel's goal wasn't to gamble on the market. It was to use mathematics, technology, and logic to make decisions smarter than emotion ever could. For English learners, think of this as the difference between guessing and knowing. Ken Griffin's world was built on knowledge. Every decision came from deep research and data, not from hope or fear. Lesson 4. The 1990s were not easy. The financial world was full of competition and collapse. Many funds rose and fell within months. But Ken had a rule: always protect the downside. He believed that surviving is more important than winning fast. He trained his team to prepare for every possible outcome. If the market went up, they were ready. If it crashed, they were still ready. This mindset, preparation over prediction, made Citadel not just a company, but a mindset for success. Students learning English can relate to this. When you study a language, you prepare. You don't know which word you'll need tomorrow, but you keep learning anyway. Preparation builds confidence, and confidence creates opportunities. Lesson 5. Ken Griffin's leadership style was sharp and direct. He expected excellence, not perfection. He was known to say that if you want comfort, don't choose finance. Choose something else. But if you want mastery, step into the storm. He created a workplace culture based on merit, where data, not seniority, made decisions. It didn't matter who you were. If your idea was better, it won. In that way, Citadel became a lab of ideas, where intellect defeated ego. This philosophy carried into his personal life as well. He believed in hard truth over easy lies, in results over promises. For English learners, this is another core value: clarity. When you speak or write English, aim to be clear, not complicated. Ken Griffin built an empire out of clarity and logic. Lesson 6. By the early 2000s, Citadel had become one of the largest hedge funds in the world. Billions under management, hundreds of employees, complex systems running 24/7, all controlled by the same principle: disciplined intelligence. But power comes with storms. The 2008 financial crisis hit the world like an earthquake. Banks collapsed, giants fell, and Citadel too was shaken. The fund lost billions in weeks. Many thought it was over. The media doubted. Competitors whispered that Griffin's fortress had finally cracked. But he didn't give up. He locked himself with his top team and began rebuilding, brick by brick, trade by trade, belief by belief. When others ran, he stayed. That single choice, not to quit when failure was loud, is what transformed him from a successful man into a legend. Lesson 7. After 2008, Ken Griffin didn't just recover, he evolved. He restructured Citadel to make it stronger, faster, and more resilient than ever. He diversified strategies, strengthened technology, and made one principle clear. We don't guess, we analyze. He believed that emotion is the enemy of execution. In life and language learning alike, that truth matters. When you panic, you forget what you know. But when you breathe, analyze, and move slowly, progress returns. For him, rebuilding wasn't a shame. It was a second education. The fall taught him humility, and the rise taught him control. Lesson 8. Outside finance, Ken Griffin became known for his philanthropy. He donated billions to education, art, and public institutions. To him, giving back wasn't charity. It was responsibility. He believed that those who rise high must strengthen the ground they came from. His donations helped schools, universities, and museums across America. He wanted to give others the chance to learn, explore, and dream, just as he did in his Harvard dorm years ago. For English learners, this lesson is about gratitude. Success isn't complete unless it helps someone else rise. Language, like knowledge, is meant to be shared. Lesson 9. As the world entered the digital age, Ken Griffin embraced data like oxygen. Artificial intelligence, algorithms, and machine learning became his weapons of precision. He didn't fear technology. He led it. In interviews, he often said, "The future belongs to those who adapt faster than fear can stop them." That's the heart of progress. English learners can see themselves here. Every time you practice a new phrase or overcome hesitation, you adapt. You move faster than fear. That's what learning is. Small acts of courage repeated daily. Lesson 10. Today, Ken Griffin stands among the wealthiest and most influential figures in the world. Yet, when asked what drives him, he doesn't talk about billions. He talks about building knowledge, building systems, building people. He once said, "The greatest return on investment is the development of human capital." That means, the more you invest in people, the stronger your world becomes. For every listener learning English, take that to heart. Your greatest investment is not money. It's your mind. The more you train it, the more your world expands. Lesson 11. After every storm, there is silence. And in that silence, Ken Griffin found clarity. The year was 2009. The markets were still trembling from the crash, and investors everywhere were afraid to breathe. But in Citadel's Chicago headquarters, Ken was already looking forward to it. He didn't blame the market. He didn't blame the system. Instead, he asked one simple question: what can we do better next time? That question became the seed for Citadel's new rise. He began to design a system that wouldn't just survive a crisis. It would learn from it. In English learning, the same truth applies. Every mistake you make, every wrong word, every mispronounced sound isn't failure. It's data. It's feedback. You don't start over, you start smarter. Ken Griffin's genius was never perfection. It was correction. Lesson 12. During the next decade, Griffin focused on speed, not human speed, but data speed. He understood that in modern finance, milliseconds decide billions. Citadel invested heavily in technology, communication lines, and algorithmic intelligence. But Ken's human touch never disappeared. He told his employees, "Technology is only as smart as the people who guide it." This was his way of saying that human judgment, the ability to think clearly under pressure, still mattered most. For English learners, this means that no app or website can replace your voice, your practice, your courage to speak. Technology helps you, but you are the learner, the thinker, the decision maker. Like Griffin, use tools, but let your mind lead. Lesson 13. By the mid-2010s, Ken Griffin was no longer just a financial leader. He was a symbol of disciplined success. His company expanded globally, managing billions with precision and care. Yet, something deeper defined him: the quiet balance between power and humility. He avoided the spotlight, rarely gave interviews, and focused on long-term goals. He believed in invisible success, the kind that doesn't shout but lasts. For language learners, invisible success happens when you quietly understand more than before. When you listen to a movie and realize you understood a full sentence. When your tongue moves naturally with words you once feared to say. That's silent progress. Powerful, lasting, invisible. Lesson 14. Ken Griffin's work ethic was legendary. He began his days early and expected precision from himself and his team. Every report, every analysis, every number had to tell a story of accuracy. But what few people knew was his deep interest in psychology, the study of human behavior. He believed that markets are not made by numbers, but by people. Fear and greed, hope and doubt. These emotions move prices more than formulas do. This is why he read not just financial reports, but also books on history, philosophy, and leadership. He studied human nature because understanding people was the true key to predicting markets. To every English learner, your words are not just vocabulary, they are emotions. When you speak, you are not just using language. You are expressing understanding. Griffin's philosophy reminds us that knowledge without empathy is incomplete. Lesson 15. As the Citadel grew, Griffin became one of the youngest billionaires in America. Yet he never saw wealth as a finish line. For him, wealth was a measurement of discipline, the result of doing something right, not the reason to do it. When asked what success means to him, he said, "Success is the ability to keep learning when others stop." That single line explains why he never slows down. For English learners, that is your key too. The difference between those who master English and those who quit early is persistence. You don't have to learn fast. You just have to not stop. Lesson 16. Ken Griffin's story is also one of emotional resilience. Behind every victory were moments of doubt, frustration, and isolation. Leadership can be lonely, and decision-making under billions of dollars pressure is not for the faint-hearted. But he practiced emotional discipline, the art of staying calm when the world isn't. When markets collapsed or traders panicked, Griffin's voice stayed level. He believed that emotion clouds vision. That same calm is essential in language learning. When you get stuck, when you forget words, or when you feel embarrassed to speak, stay calm. Learning is not about speed. It's about consistency. Lesson 17. One of the most powerful moments in Ken Griffin's life was not on Wall Street, but in education. He donated hundreds of millions to Harvard, Chicago universities, and schools across America. His reason? Education had given him everything. He once said, "Ideas are the currency of the future." That line defines the soul of his philanthropy. He wanted young people to have access to ideas. Because one idea, in the right mind, can change the world. You, the listener, are learning English right now. You are holding that same currency. Every new word you learn is an idea. Every phrase is a door. Every sentence is a future conversation that might change your life. Lesson 18. Griffin's philosophy of leadership wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It was about listening, analyzing, and acting decisively. He encouraged his team to debate, disagree, and challenge assumptions. He knew that true innovation comes from friction, from minds that collide and create sparks of new thinking. In English learning, friction also helps. When you challenge yourself with difficult content, when you argue with your mistakes, when you step outside comfort, that's when real growth happens. Growth is never quiet. It's noisy, messy, uncomfortable, but it's real. Lesson 19. There was another side to Ken Griffin, the art lover. Few know that he is one of the world's biggest supporters of modern art. He bought masterpieces, funded museums, and restored cultural landmarks. When asked why, he said, "Art reminds us of beauty in complexity." That sentence carries wisdom for language learners. English, too, is an art, made of rhythm, tone, and creativity. It's not just rules, it's music. The way you speak, pause, and express emotion, that's art. And learning it, like mastering any art, takes time, patience, and love. Lesson 20. As the 2020s arrived, Citadel entered a new era, data-driven precision. The company became a fortress of information, using cutting-edge algorithms and human intelligence combined. But at the heart of it, Griffin's leadership still came down to one belief: people matter more than profits. He wanted his teams to think like owners, not employees, to care about every decision as if it were their own. That's why his empire grew not through fear, but through belief. In English, belief plays the same role. You can't master a language you secretly doubt. You must believe you can learn it, even on hard days. Belief is the foundation of fluency. Lesson 21. Ken Griffin once described failure as the tuition you pay for experience. What a powerful metaphor. Failure isn't punishment, it's education. When Citadel made mistakes, he didn't hide them. He studied them. He built systems to ensure they never repeated the same error twice. That's how progress works. Not through perfection, but through iteration. For language learners, the same truth shines. Every wrong word, every awkward conversation, every misunderstood phrase, that's tuition. You're paying it now to speak freely later. Lesson 22. As his empire expanded globally, Ken Griffin became known for precision leadership. Every second mattered, every decision was data-driven. But deep inside, he remained curious, the same boy who once stared at numbers in his Harvard dorm. That curiosity kept him young in thought, open to innovation, and eager to keep learning. The most successful people never outgrow curiosity. They remain students, forever learning, questioning, adapting. If you're learning English, hold on to that same curiosity. Ask why words connect. Ask how phrases change meaning in emotion. Curiosity keeps you alive in learning. Lesson 23. There's a lesson hidden inside Griffin's story about time. He never wasted it. He believed that how you spend hours defines how your life unfolds. Every morning, he planned his day like a strategist, prioritizing what mattered most. He often said, "Time is the only investment that never pays off." That sentence applies to everyone. If you waste time comparing your English to others, you lose the only thing that can make you fluent: practice. Use your hours wisely. Talk, read, listen, repeat. Every minute builds a skill that will last forever. Lesson 24. Ken Griffin's empire wasn't built alone. He surrounded himself with extraordinary minds, mathematicians, engineers, economists, but also artists, writers, and psychologists. He believed that diversity of thought brings clarity of vision. That's why Citadel's success was not mechanical. It was human. In English, too, diversity helps. Listen to different accents, watch different films, learn from people around the world. Every version of English adds color to your understanding. Don't fear difference, embrace it. Lesson 25. There were times when Ken Griffin faced criticism from competitors, the media, and even public controversies. But his principle never changed. Focus on facts, not noise, he said. Truth doesn't shout, it stands. That's a line worth remembering. When people doubt you, stay silent and let your work speak. When you feel your English isn't good enough, remember, you don't need to prove your worth every second. You just need to keep learning. Truth stands. Lesson 26. As Citadel entered the new decade, Ken Griffin's focus turned toward innovation and education. He often said, "We can't predict the future, but we can prepare our minds for it." That line wasn't just about finance, it was about life. He began investing more into research, science, and education. He believed that the next generation needed not only money, but mental sharpness. He supported math programs, economic foundations, and scholarships that reached even small-town schools. To him, intelligence wasn't a privilege. It was a responsibility. The world needed smart people who cared, not just clever people who calculated. That same idea applies to language. When you learn English, you aren't just learning a skill. You're preparing your mind to connect with the world. Every new word gives you access to new thoughts, new people, and new opportunities. Lesson 27. Ken Griffin's leadership style was quiet confidence. He didn't believe in drama, noise, or fame. His strength was focus. When he worked, he disconnected from distractions. No social media, no unnecessary meetings, just clarity. He once said, "You can't build an empire if your attention is scattered." And that is true for English learners too. You can't learn a language if your attention keeps shifting from one method to another. Choose your path. Maybe it's videos, maybe it's conversations, maybe it's documentaries like this one. And stay with it. Consistency wins every time. Griffin's empire wasn't built in a day. It was built 1 hour at a time over decades through constant, focused learning. Lesson 28. In 2021, the financial world watched as Citadel became a central player in the GameStop phenomenon, one of the most chaotic moments in stock market history. The internet was exploding, traders were angry, headlines were brutal. But Griffin didn't panic. He stayed calm, made decisions based on facts, and guided his team through the storm. Whether people agreed or disagreed, one thing stood out: his ability to remain rational when everyone else was emotional. And that's a priceless lesson for English learners. When others mock your accent, when you feel frustrated because progress is slow, stay rational. Don't let emotions decide your future. Let discipline guide your learning. The ones who stay calm win. Lesson 29. Beyond the markets and headlines, Ken Griffin's legacy grew in another direction: generosity. He donated billions to hospitals, schools, and cultural projects. His name now stands on museum walls, science institutes, and educational buildings across the United States. But when asked about it, he simply said, "The real return on investment is impact." That line reveals everything about his character. Money was just a tool, not the goal. What mattered most was the ability to change lives. As an English learner, you might think your words don't matter. But they do. Every word you learn gives you the power to inspire, to connect, to create impact. You may not donate millions, but your voice can move someone's heart. That's the real impact. Lesson 30. Ken Griffin once described leadership in a single sentence. The best leaders build others, not empires. And that is exactly what he did. Through Citadel, through his foundations, through his mentoring of young minds, he built others. He created an environment where learning and precision coexisted with creativity and courage. For you, the listener, this is where the real message begins. You don't have to build a financial empire, but you can build a linguistic one. You can build a voice that carries strength, confidence, and clarity wherever you go. Learning English is not just about speaking correctly. It's about thinking bigger, dreaming louder, and believing that your story matters, just like Ken Griffin's did. Lesson 31. When people asked him how he manages stress, Griffin said something profound. You can't control the storm, but you can control your response. That simple wisdom defines his life. He never allowed panic to control his choices. Instead, he trained his mind to stay clear, calm, and analytical. You can do the same with language. Some days, English feels impossible, but you control how you respond. You can quit, or you can breathe, reset, and continue. Resilience is your greatest teacher. Lesson 32. One of the quiet but defining traits of Ken Griffin is gratitude. Despite his success, he often credits others, his teachers, mentors, and even his critics. He once said, "Every person you meet teaches you something. The smart ones keep learning." That's a golden rule for anyone improving their English. Every conversation, every new friend, every video, every book, they're all teachers. The key is to listen. When you approach learning with gratitude, your brain relaxes and understanding grows naturally. Gratitude is not just good manners, it's fuel for learning. Lesson 33. Ken Griffin's journey wasn't built on chance. It was built on choice. Every day, he chose to learn, to lead, to adapt. He chose discipline over comfort, curiosity over ego, focus over fame. And those choices added up, one decision at a time, until he became one of the most powerful financial minds in history. For English learners, this is the same formula. You don't become fluent by accident. You become fluent by choice, by choosing to read today, to listen carefully, to speak even if your words shake. Every small choice builds your confidence. Lesson 34. As he looks toward the future, Ken Griffin's focus remains the same: building, learning, and giving. His story is proof that greatness doesn't come from luck. It comes from clarity, courage, and commitment. He once said, "If you want to do something extraordinary, start by being consistent." That's not just a business quote. It's a life quote. Consistency is what separates dreamers from doers and speakers from learners. So the next time you practice English, remember, every repetition is a brick. Every sentence is a wall. Every conversation is a door. And one day, you'll walk through that door, fluent, confident, unstoppable. Lesson 35. Now, take a deep breath. Because you've just heard the story of a man who turned $265 in a dorm room into a global empire. Not because of luck, but because of learning. Ken Griffin's life reminds us that no one starts powerful. Everyone starts small, uncertain, imperfect. What matters is persistence, the will to improve every single day. And that's your lesson today, too. You might live in a small town. You might feel shy when you speak. You might still search for words. But that's exactly where greatness begins, in the quiet effort no one sees. English is not just a language. It's a bridge to confidence, opportunity, and self-expression. When you learn it with purpose, it transforms not just your communication, but your entire future. So here's your call to action. Don't stop now. Don't wait for the perfect time. Every minute you spend listening, repeating, and practicing is one step closer to fluency. If this story moved you, share it. If you felt inspired, hit like. And if you're ready to keep learning powerful English through the world's most inspiring true stories, subscribe now to the Control English channel. Because this isn't just a documentary. It's your classroom of real stories, real voices, and real transformation. This is your moment. This is your vault. And your journey to fluency begins now.